The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. Reliance on any information provided here is solely at your own risk. Welcome to the Birth Baby Podcast. Each week, you'll find guidance, encouragement, and practical tools to support you through pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum journey. I'm your host, Ciarra Morgan, a certified birth and postpartum doula, hypnobirthing educator, and pediatric sleep consultant. I'm also the owner of a doula agency in Austin, Texas, and the founder of the Birth Baby Academy, where I offer classes for both parents and birth professionals. Thanks for being here. Hello, everyone. Today I have Chelsey Scaffidi with me. She is an author, attorney, meditation teacher, and mother of two whose work explores the transformation women experience through motherhood. And she is an internationally best-selling author with the book The Mother Year. Mother of the Year. You're also Mother of the Year, but it's called The Mother Year. And I actually met Chelsey at a local event at Birth Co. And I was just so impressed with her. And I thought her book was so special and sweet. And I was like, you've got to come on to my podcast and talk about this and the reason behind it and the passion behind it. So thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to have this conversation. It was so nice to meet you. I felt the same way. It was like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it was such a great part of my day and unexpected too.
Yeah.
So tell us what inspired you to write this book, The Mother Year.
Ooh. So I have two little boys, 5 and 2. And when I had my first 5 years ago, I think motherhood just really cracked me open in a way that I wasn't expecting. I was kind of a quintessential, I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate to this. I was just a very high achieving. I was a lawyer. I am still a lawyer. And I had this very clear path on how my life from a career perspective was going to look. And I always wanted a family and I wanted kids, but I just couldn't picture it. I was like, that's something in the future. And so when I had my son in COVID, it was the first time, first off, it was the first time that I had really had like time off of work, which was maternity leave. And I thought that this leading up to having him, I thought maternity leave, having 6 months off was going to be this what am I going to do with myself all day? 6 months and anyone who's a mother knows that those first 6 months, you're not just sitting around wondering what to do all day. Your life is very full. And I felt so my type A, I would say I'm a type A, type B person. My type A side felt like I had done everything that I could possibly do to prepare for this baby and to prepare for maternity leave and for birth. I had a beautiful birth. And then in postpartum, while the baby was so set up, my son, Crew, he was thriving. I did not do any of the work to set myself up. I didn't expect myself to change. And so I started voice noting myself every night. I wanted to journal. That was a practice I had as a meditation teacher before having kids. And so I really thought I bought this beautiful journal. You buy the journal, you buy the pens, and you're all set up. And then I
all
was
of the best intentions.
Exactly. And then I had no free hand, honestly. I was breastfeeding and, just I couldn't sit down and write. And so I turned on my phone and hit record, noting myself. And I did that the next day and the next day and the next day. And ultimately, I did that for a year. And those voice notes really sparked a conversation that I started having with other mothers, which was did you feel different? Did this feel the way that you thought it was going to feel? And what I heard over and over and over again was that sometimes, especially in that first year, there was times when I felt like I was failing, like I was dying, like my identity was dying, like parts of me were falling away. And once you get through it to the other side, you can look back. It's like the analogy of the butterfly, it's like once you're to the butterfly and you can kind of see like, oh wow, that process was really helpful and it was leading me to this place, you can have kind of a more grounded perspective. But when you're in it, it just feels so stretchy and hard. And so I started having conversations with other women about this when I moved to Austin, actually. I've been in Austin for 4 years. And I really felt like there wasn't anything out there that was what my book ended up being, which is called The Mother Year. And the Mother Year is 1 page a day. And it is based on, I went back and listened to the voice note of what I was thinking and grappling with on my day 80. And it's really to offer a mother in that first year, like read 1 page, feel seen, feel uplifted. There's a daily prayer. Every 4 days, there's a sip of self care. So it really just, it started with just me hitting record and it turned into a 550-page book that I call it my book baby. It's really one of the things that I feel the most proud of and that I've connected with so many women now, like around the world on this book. And I just never thought that I would be here. I didn't see myself as being an author. I didn't see myself as being a writer. And now I feel like those are big parts of my identity. So
Just like
I've
motherhood,
learned a
right?
lot. Yes.
Everything changes. I mean, motherhood for me, for my second baby, changed my career. I
Mm,
wasn't in birth work before the birth of my son. I have a 16-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. And my birth with him is what brought me to wanting to be an educator and a doula.
mm,
And I worked at a civil engineering firm before, like nothing even close to. And my degree is in criminal justice with minor in forensic psychology. Like it's wild what parenthood will change, sometimes even our career. So now you're an author. Check you out.
yeah.
I what I really love is you also interviewed moms for this book, right?
Yeah. So that was something for people who are like geek out on the book process, because I think this is like a whole nother conversation and really interesting. But I worked with a book doula. Like
When
once
you
I
said that, I
knew,
almost died. I thought you were joking because I'm a doula. I thought you were
yeah,
like trying to help me understand what they did for you and you're like, "No, really. It was a book
no, it's a book
doula."
doula. I worked with this woman, her name's Christina Rose, and she was the first person that I said out loud, like, this idea I have. I've sat in if you're in Austin, I sat in Better Half Coffee and listened to all 365 voice notes, and I have so much to say to that version of myself or to women going through that. And I told her, I have this idea. I want to call it the Mother Year. And she had worked on all these books. She did like a stint at the New York Times. And she was like, I've never heard a book title where I was like, yes, go ahead. I'm always like, yeah, put a pin in that. We're probably not going to keep that title. And she was like, this is the first time in a long time I can remember. Like, I love that title. That like hits home. I want you to keep it. And just seeing that reflected in someone else's eyes, like, yes, this could really be a thing, was so uplifting. And then ultimately I found a publisher. But one of the things that Christina had said to me was, you who is your reader for this book? And I said, mom's in their first year. And she said, well, how old is your baby now? And at that point, Crew was like 18 months. And so I wasn't in my first year anymore. And even though I had this really amazing record of my first year, when we were talking about like what I wanted for the reader, which wasn't just to like tell someone, there's books where it's like a memoir and you're just telling someone about your experience. And that's not what this book is. I was really clear about that. And she helped me get clear about that. It was about my reader and feeling like that woman reading the pages, feeling like, oh, I can implement this, or I can feel inspired, or I can feel seen. And so she encouraged me to talk to my reader. And I'm sure this is how you feel as a podcast host. I had one conversation with one of my best friends who had at the time, I think her baby was like 3 months old. I had one conversation with her and I just asked her questions about what she was going through. And it was supposed to be a 15-minute conversation, turned into an hour and a half conversation. And I loved having that conversation. And I guess my type A high achieving brain was like, okay, before this book comes out, I want to interview. I want to have these types of conversations with 100 women. And so honestly, that part took even longer than writing the book because
I
talking to
bet.
100 women,
And
but what
and
a
that are new moms and that actually have the
yes,
time, make the time to talk to you.
right. I got much better about saying it's a 15-minute conversation. It's 3 questions. But it ended up being such a beautiful exercise because at the end of the conversation, I would say, do you have any mothers who are in their first year that would be willing to talk to me? And most of them said yes and connected me to other women. And being new to Austin, I ended up meeting some of my now 4 years later, like my closest friends from interviews, just having a 15-minute call to talk about this thing that they were going through. And interestingly enough, um, so many times I heard, wow, no one's asked me that. Like no one sat down to really ask me about my experience because I think family tends to say, how's the baby?
I
I think
know.
medical professionals tend to ask, how's the baby? I mean, it's not very often that a mother in that first year carves out 15 minutes and answers the question of, what are the words you need to hear today? If you could name what season are you in? And I would describe the way I saw these seasons in the first year, like, what season do you think you're in? And women would stop and really contemplate that and have these really profound, beautiful reflections about what they were going through. And it was often just a brief pause of them recognizing, like, wow, I haven't stopped and asked myself these questions. I haven't said out loud how I'm feeling. So it ended
You
up
know,
being just a really, really beautiful experience.
what's really cool about that is you have no idea what butterfly effect that had
Mhm.
on their lives. Like just by having that conversation with you, that could have changed their trajectory too, because they did stop and take that time for themselves. And that's what this book can create over time for other mothers. And that's exactly what you wanted to produce. Just out of
Love
curiosity,
that.
how long were these voice notes to yourself? You just said you listened to 365 of them inside of a coffee shop. So I'm like, was
Yeah.
that over a number of days or did you do that at one time?
No, this is like a number of weeks. I mean, most of the
Okay.
voice notes were about 2 to 3 minutes, but I always joke that whoever was working in that coffee shop during that time was probably like, "What is this girl listening to?" Because it wasn't like I was just had my headphones on and was, like, happily listening to these voice notes. I mean, they were hard to hear. It was hard to hear your own voice cracking. It was hard to hear yourself suffering in some ways, like,
Hmm.
cracking open and trying to figure out and grasping. And so I was often like in the corner crying, listening to my own voice notes. Um, and which is just, I think back on that now, I was just back at Better Half the other day and I was like, I wonder if they remember me, like the girl who sat at, because I sat at the same seat every day. I came back for weeks. I had actually accepted a new position and I made it so I had like a month gap in between my job, my old job and the job I was taking. And so I like had to get it done in those weeks. So I was really committed to listening to all 365.
That's awesome. So the term matrescence is not something that people hear very often. I remember, I think probably 3 years ago was the first time I ever heard that. And that was 5 years of being a mom before I ever heard
Hmm.
it. So can you tell people what matrescence means and why it is important for us to understand it?
I love this question. So I like to think of matrescence as the metamorphosis of motherhood. It's really the transition into a new role. At the core, like the more scientific definition would be it's the developmental stage of becoming a mother. And through my research and conversations, I've now kind of narrowed it down to these 5 dimensions of change when you're in matrescence. And that is your sense of self, your hormones, your awareness, which has a lot to do with the changes in the brain. And that's the area of science that's getting the most traction right now as it relates to matrescence are the brain studies. And then the physiological changes, we have 12 systems in our body, and all of them change in motherhood. And then the last is emotions, just the emotional landscape, the emotional range in motherhood is something that shifts profoundly. And so these five dimensions, the five dimensions actually spell the word shape. That's how I remember it.
Oh, I love that.
Um, and in the TED talk that I just gave, the idea was that motherhood doesn't just change you, it reshapes you into someone new. And I remember really feeling like it was a badge of honor before I became a mother to say, I'm going to still be me just with a baby. And I'm going to still, you see a lot of these memes on Instagram and other places of like, I'm going to still do all the things I did with a baby. And, like it's like something to be really proud of. And there is an element of that that is so true. Like, yes, I still want to go on date nights with my husband and I want to still travel and I want to still do the things that lit me up before I had a baby. However, you are someone different on the other side of that. And stepping into that with courage and grace is something that I don't think should be shunned. And I think it is. I think a lot of women feel like they're failing because they don't know that it's a transition. They don't know that it's this tunnel. And I often link this back to uh, adolescence because the word matrescence, which has been around since the 70s, Dana Raphael, the same woman who gave us the word doula, actually,
Oh,
gave us the word matrescence. And she came up with the term, kind of basing the term on adolescence. And in adolescence, if you think about that, like those years when you're changing, when you're again on those five dimensions, right? Your sense of self is changing, your hormones are all over the place. We know that in adolescence and teens, your brain is particularly malleable. You have a lot of physiological changes and a lot of emotions. And if you imagine like a teenager who was going through what they're going through, but not knowing this is going to end, this is going to maybe not end, that might not be the right term, but this is going to be something that I get to the other side of. There's going to
yeah.
be a homeostasis part. I'm in a state of deep change and profound transformation, and there will be the other side of this. If we didn't know that, if we didn't have a cultural understanding of those teenage years being what they are, like a transition, think how hard that would be
Hmm.
for a teenager not knowing this is normal, for parents parenting teenagers to not know this is just a stage, you're going through a really hard time. I'm going to support you. Like I think how much support we know teenagers need. It's so studied. Um, and the first study to use the word matrescence in a scientific study was in 2022. So
Wow.
it's so far behind where it should be. And I'm really happy that matrescence is getting a lot more traction and that people are talking about it. And I've become really passionate about spreading awareness about it because I don't want, going back to those voice notes, I don't want women to think that what they're going through isn't normal, that it's not temporary, that it's not um, just like a part of the process, a necessary part of the process. Like if you became a mother and nothing about you changed, that would be hard.
Yeah, we
you know,
wouldn't
it,
be good moms.
you wouldn't be. You wouldn't be because in adolescence the brain is changing for social. That's what's happening. You think about a teenager, their whole brain is shifting to a social society where they have more of a desire for partnership and friendship and community. In matrescence, the brain is being rewired for caregiving. So it's a necessary part of being a, good mom, of being a responsive caretaker at the end of the day. And so it's not something to be ashamed of. I really grapple with the term mom brain because I know what that feels like. I know that moment of like, I don't remember that thing. And it's so easy to like throw that word out in a negative way, like, oh, it's just mom brain. Like what you're kind of saying
Broken.
is like, I'm dumber or
Yeah.
but really your brain is just cutting away its synaptic pruning. It's trimming away the less efficient parts so that the most important parts can step forward. It's like, I don't need to remember my second cousin's birthday. I do need to remember how many hours it's been since I fed my baby. Like
Right.
the details just come into focus and some other ones go in the background. And that's a
My friend's
necessary part of the
mom,
process.
my friend's mom used to always tell her that her hard drive was full and it has to get rid of the other stuff to put new stuff in.
Oh,
And
I
now
love
she's
that.
actually, I know, isn't that great? Well, what's
Yeah.
kind of funny is now she has a great sense of humor and she's in beginning stages of Alzheimer's. And she goes,
Mhm.
"See, I told you my hard drive is full. Now I'm just really offloading, you know?" So I was like, that's a
Oh my
great perspective.
gosh.
I love it. But I'm
Adding
so
levity.
guilty. Yeah, I'm so guilty though of perpetuating what you're saying. And I'm usually so conscious of not doing those things, like especially when it comes to birth. I don't ever want to look at birth in a way or say birth out loud in a way that makes any young girl afraid to do it. I talk a lot in my
Mhm.
hypnobirthing classes about this isn't something that is done to you. This is something that you get to do.
Mhm.
But when I don't remember stuff, I always joke that my kids stole all my brain cells and that's why they're so smart. But I just, just to be silly and funny and like, again,
Yeah.
bring levity. But you're right. It's that, and I do have brain fog and I am perimenopausal, like I do need my magnesium supplement. But um, I love that when you said adolescence, when I first met you and you made that comparison, I had never heard that comparison. And it was like
Mhm.
oh my gosh, of course. Like that makes so much sense. And we don't need permission, but we need acknowledgement and affirmation that what we're going through is not wrong and it is a good thing. It's not a deficit or a defect. It is a necessary part of being a parent. And not a lot of moms before they become a mom realize that. But
Right.
occasionally you find somebody who is just like so self-aware and has done so much pre-work before having
Mm.
their own children that they do. I mean, I was 24 when I became a mom. I had been a nanny and stuff like that, but I hadn't really thought of the emotional shifts, the shifts of me as a partner. Like my ex-husband, 2 years after our daughter was born, I was not the same person that he married,
Right.
nor should I be, right?
Right.
But it was a good thing and not a bad thing, but then it was looked at as a bad thing. And
Yeah.
I met a mom who I did a class for recently, and she had been a stepmom. So I think that piece had made her like more aware of what she was about to do. And she was excited for labor because I was like, "Do you have any fears going into this?" And she goes, "No, I'm just really excited for birth." And I said, "That is so cool. Not a lot of people having their first baby say that." And she
Yeah.
said, "I can't wait to meet who I am."
Mm.
Think about that. I can't wait to meet who I am. And I was like,
Mhm.
what a beautiful thing that you can understand and acknowledge that you're not who you're going to be yet.
Right.
And you know that there's this transformation. And I love that you call it a metamorphosis because that is what it is. So you
Well,
bringing awareness to this is so important.
yeah, and I'm sure you see this in birth. I've felt this my both my births. I had to like the hardest births are when you're holding on, right? Like you have to let go. You have to just really like let go in
Surrender.
birth,
Yeah.
surrender completely. And I think and that holding on or like trying to control the contractions or the way it's going is not going to be helpful. And it can cause like more pain, more suffering. And I
Mhm.
think the same is true in this transition. The more you hold on to like, I have to be who I was before because my friends want me to be that, because my family thinks I'm that, because my husband needs me to be that. The harder that you hold on to those strings of who you were before, the harder the transition is into motherhood and the harder it is to just find that new person because you're not looking for her. So I
Mhm.
think that's why that reflection is so beautiful of saying, I am going to meet this person on the other side. I'm just going to let go of who I've been and I'm going to welcome this new side of me. You're right. It's not something we hear very often. Um, I also, as you were talking, was thinking in the research, I recently did an article for Good Housekeeping and they have amazing fact checkers and it was really fun because we just like poured over the studies and I just could talk about the studies all day. But there had been increasing studies about adopted parents, um, and they're using some of this data with same-sex couples to try to see like, do you biologically have to give birth in order to see some of the brain changes that come from matrescence. And what they're finding is that there are some things that are, you really need to be the biological parent, when you're growing the baby, but there's a lot of brain changes that can happen just from proximity to a child, to taking on that caregiving role. Your neural pathways do change. And so they're finding that in adoptive parents and in surrogate, parents, women who are doing surrogacy, that their brains can still adapt even if they didn't actually have the child. And so I'm thinking about the example you gave where the woman was a stepmother. It's like some of her pathways had probably started to shift, which is
Yeah,
really
you're right.
cool. That even if she, didn't birth that other child, she had she had started to dip her toe in the
Maybe mine had
changes.
already changed as a nanny. I was with kids 12 hours a day, and I was there with the twins, numbers 4 and 5 in that family from the day they came home from the hospital, 12
Wow.
hours a day, 5 days a week for years. So,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I had never
Yeah.
thought of it that way. It's very possible that some of mine had already changed.
Well, because there's another term which has not gotten traction. Actually, I hope it does because we're really close to Father's Day. But there's a term called patrescence, which is the
Mm,
changes that happen in fathers. And there's an amazing study that shows, yes, the father's brain does change as well, but there's one factor that determines whether or not it's not just like in a biological mother, a lot of this stuff happens just because if you are the birthing mother, um, in fathers, their brain can change only when they are a present and like when they are an involved caregiver. So the more involved, which makes sense, right? The more involved and interaction they have with that child, the more their brain changes, which is why I always tell women that when I'm at these circles or in other places that like involving your partner from an early stage can help. Because a lot of women say, my husband's not really helpful with the baby until the babies are like 2, when they're not breastfeeding, when they're walking, when they're and I totally get that. Like mom is the primary source. You're feeding, but finding ways for your husband to support you and interact with your baby early on can change his brain that then leads to a more integrated, present caregiver later on in the child's life. And so yeah, I grapple with that a lot because I sit in a lot of I host women's circles here in Austin, and Mother Blessings. And I hear a lot of this of like, you know, just the mom taking a lot of that on, like
I
being
see
the
it as a doula.
default. Yeah, I'm sure. And it's like those partners, they want to be involved usually. And the more you can like let them, the more you're allowing their brain to shift and change alongside you.
Yeah. And sometimes when they don't, like I've had people say to me, like, well, that's 5 hypnobirthing classes. Like, which ones are important for him to go to? And I'll say, well, all of them, some of them are more partner specific, but why do you ask? Because if it's that they travel or that they have meetings and they can choose 2 weeks that they're able to come, but that they're not able to miss all of those meetings or something like that, then sure. But I've had people say, because I just know that he's not going to do 5. And I say something that's kind of hard. I say, that's up to you, but I do want you to consider if he's not willing to invest these 5 classes that are 2.5 hours each for just 5 weeks, how does that trickle down? How does that trickle down to
Mhm.
middle of the night, diaper changes, to you taking a nap during the day so that they're caring for the child, to
Mhm.
supporting you through breastfeeding when you're crying, like
Right.
you need to
Yeah.
consider that. And it's funny too that you mentioned the putrescence and the act of being there, but like a mother who gives birth but then gives her baby for adoption, she still has those brain changes because her body physiologically went through the act of giving birth, which is so interesting. And then the putrescence thing, how they have to be involved. My husband met me as already a mother. I had already gone through matrescence. So
Mm.
he never had to see a shift in me really because I had
He met
already
you on the
done it.
other side.
Yes. But he had already been living with his friend who had 3 children and active in their lives, taking them to football practice, helping with all of these things. So for him, he had kind of already been in that, like they called him Uncle Kyle, you
Wow.
know?
Yeah.
So that, and they wanted to be in our wedding. So that was like, I got the benefit of a man who had been around a bunch of children without
That's
having to deal with
amazing.
another woman. And I was like, sorry, you have to actually deal with another person, but I don't. Um,
Oh my
but
gosh,
it is so
that's big.
interesting when you think about it that these shifts and identity shifts, I wish that more men were educated about this because just like with our menstrual cycles and everything, like so many things about women, women realize when they're older. They learn when they're older. They don't even learn about them in school. We don't learn about any of this. And then men surely don't. So if men knew about matrescence and this change, then maybe we would have less people after they give birth and have children together feel this identity shift splits them because it's an understood that we will be, because sometimes we do feel like we can't move into matrescence in the way that we want because we're being judged by our partner, or like he's not going to love me if I'm authentic to this side of me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want him to want me to be who I
Think
used
I've
to be.
Yeah, or like think I've changed, right? That's like the
Yeah.
thing that gets thrown in your face.
Yeah.
Is like, you like you're not allowed to change. And the reality is you always change, whether it's a baby or something else. Life will change you the longer that you're together. And I say this a lot because I think, like I said early on, I think if you would have asked me what would being a mother do, and I would have said, to my life, it would be me, but with a baby. And the reality is, what I wish I would have said, and what I encourage my single friends to say now is like, what will our life look like when we have children? Like, it'll be a give and take, not just on who's caring for the baby, but that trickles down too. Who's going to work more? Who's going to leave early to go pick up, who's going to figure out, like my husband and I don't do a lot of the cleaning. I don't do he is so good about, like, he loves mornings, so he gets up early, he makes breakfast. He likes to load the dishwasher. Like, he has things that he's really passionate about. And then there's things that I do, and it's not 50-50 in that we do everything together, him 50, me 50. But if you look at the totality of things, he's taking a big piece of the pie and I'm taking a big piece of the pie. And I do think that if more men realize that, um, you know, that she's going to be something and someone different on the other side, they would also give more grace. And I feel
An
like if
evolved version is how I look at
right.
it.
Well, I know one of my friends always says, she has a podcast called Little Honey Money, and she did an episode where they were talking about how motherhood is like this 2.0 version of you, which I'm always like, I love. I'm always really hesitant because I know a lot of women who are struggling on their fertility
Mm.
journey, and I don't want them to think they're
Oh,
not
yes,
whole
of course.
exactly as they are. But I think when you go through that, if you go through motherhood, there is this version of you that is an evolved version of where you were because you have an expanded awareness, and you do rise to that in a lot of ways. But the other thing about putrescence is that I think if men knew that they are not expected to stay the same and that they aren't going to stay the same if they are the father that we all hope that they're going to be, that would give them a lot of leeway. My husband, when I had my first son, I remember we don't have a lot of disagreements. Like we have a really good communication. That's like the strength of our relationship. But I was really upset that he did not take his full paternity. He was like, I'm just too overwhelmed. I can take a week, and he only had 2 weeks paternity, which is wild. But it really struck a chord with me.
You're like, you're
And
overwhelmed?
yeah, I was like, you can't take 2 weeks and figure this out. And in the for my second, by then the company had changed their policy and he had 4 weeks. And we had decided we were going to go to Bali for that month just to like not let because his job would they would cheat. They would like text like, "Hey, can you look at this?" He's on paternity, he's supposed to be really focusing on the family, and they would kind of infiltrate. Um, and ultimately, we spent 4 weeks in Bali, and at the end of those 4 weeks, we were like, "This is what life is needs to be. Like, this is the most important thing that we are doing." And so he ended up quitting his corporate job like 6 months
Oh,
later,
wow.
and we completely turned around our whole life, like because of him actually taking space and me giving him the what do I think he thought, well, I have to be the breadwinner and I have to do all these things. And yes, I love that he is contributing financially and I contribute financially too. And I would rather that for us specifically. It's better for us to like both work, but
Mm-hmm.
both in jobs that respect that we have a family.
Mm-hmm.
And he's around so much more. He's not waking up at 3 a.m. like stressing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I just say that because as we come up to Father's Day, like I do think it's hard to be a father too. I think it's hard to
Yeah.
like know where to slot in. I think there's an expectation of like, oh, she's doing that. I have to like be this strong, all providing, no emotion. And I don't think that's what we're really asking of fathers. I think that's an assumption that if we cracked open that conversation, a lot of good could come out of it.
And I think that some of that comes from other men. Like
Yeah.
my husband is, they joke that like he's the good husband of the group, the good dad of the group, because he's not going out as many times as all of them are. Or they'll be like, "Oh man, you're showing us up. Stop doing that." Like, "What do you mean you're going home to put the kid to bed?" And he's like, "My son wants me." And they're like, "Mom can do it," and they're like, "Come on,
Mhm.
Ciarra, you can do it, right?" And kind of joking, like, "Come on, Kyle, stay with us." And he's like, "No, maybe I'll come back later after he's asleep. Maybe I won't, but I'm definitely going to go put my kid to bed." And not every time, but most of the time.
Yeah.
And so it's to the point where our son thinks that both of us should be at all events because we have done so many both events at school that I'm like, all right, bud, we've got to reanalyze. Like we both can't take off in the middle of the day every single time. There's way too many
Right.
parties at school. But the men typically that are making space for family and doing that Matrescence thing kind of are a little bit emasculated in their groups sometimes
Mhm.
because it's almost like, "Ah, she has you whipped," or, "Oh,
Mhm.
come on, you're so weak," or whatever. And his friends are joking and he doesn't care. But it is a little underlying, there's a little truth said in jest?
Which is funny, right? Because the opposite is true for mothers. Like you can imagine if you were with a group of moms and
Oh,
like I
yeah.
think it would be the opposite. It'd be like we're all going home to put our kids to bed. And if one of them was like, "No, let's stay out, let dad do it." y- there could be like why
Oh,
doesn't
for
she
sure.
go put her, there's
Like,
like this
why doesn't she wanna do
expectation.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's this expectation on
Almost like we're
mothers that
broken if we don't wanna do it, but
exactly
it's
if
normal for
we're
them not to.
right. Yeah, it's and, like what a beautiful world. I often like close my eyes and think about like what do I want this world to look like? Like what how do I want mothers to be treated? How do I want fathers to show up? And how cool would it be if it was like a bunch of guys were out and they were like, "Hey, let's go put our kids to bed." And then like if anyone still feels like meeting up, like if it was like encouraged. And
Mhm.
I do think there is more of that. And my husband talks about this often. He actually like said, like, one of the things I kind of look for in a friend, like, not just like a work friend or like a networking friend, but like a true close friend is that we prioritize our family because I don't want to feel bad about doing these things. Like, of course, there'll be times where I'm out with the guys or going on trips, but like, I want us to kind of all have a shared value system. And I see more of that. I mean, if you think about, I don't know how your parents were. My parents are amazing, but my mom took the brunt of raising us. My dad was like
Mhm.
off working and my mom was doing so much. And I see more and more where that paradigm is changing and it gives me hope of like, the dads being the preferred one to put their kids to bed because like their kid is saying like, I love when you do it.
Mhm.
Um,
And the coaching, the football or whatever, like we just had flag football end a couple of weeks ago and the two dads that were coaches for our team, like the love they poured into these boys and how positive they were, like, just for them trying and excelling. We lost almost every single game. I think we won 2 games. Like we went weeks without a touchdown. And these dads were still so positive, never hard on these boys and actually would tell them pick up the flag for the other person that you just pulled it off of and hand it back to them. Like we are going to be
mm,
respectful. One kid didn't high five in the end of the game and they made him go back around and do it again because we are going to be kind to our other teammates and I was like, "Oh man, I want these kind of men pouring into our boys." And my
yeah.
mother-in-law said she watched one of the games. She said it was so beautiful to see these dads doing this. And she's like, my husband was always like this. And that's why your husband knows how to be like this. But it was not the norm. And it is becoming more of the norm. And it makes me happy.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I love where this conversation went. This was not even the conversation I wanted to have to you. This was perfect. Do you have anything that if a mother is listening that you would want her to hear? You're like so many things, Ciarra.
I think I would just say that there is beauty in the becoming, even if it doesn't feel like that every day. Like being where I am now, I look back at those really hard years. I mean, I'm still in it. We're trying for our third right now. But I remember just feeling like, is this what it's supposed to feel like? And I think whenever we're in a state of transformation, like we are being stretched, it's not always comfortable. But it is part of this like larger picture that's getting you somewhere. And so I think we can either like spiral up or spiral down. And so there's something that gives me a lot of peace and hopefully helps like a woman spiral up when you know that there is beauty in the becoming, even when those days feel just really stretchy and hard.
I love you calling it stretchy. That's great. And okay, so I will of course add this in the show notes, but can you tell people where to find you?
My Instagram is Chelsey Scaffidi, and I also have an Instagram for the Mother Year that I don't post a lot there, but there's a link tree there that has the website, and you can buy the book anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Nobles, all the places. And yeah, it's called The Mother Year. And I would love to hear from you. When you get the book, there's actually a QR code that lets you scan free meditations for one for each season, because there's 4 seasons of the book. And that also connects you to me. So it's called the Seasons Portal that you get access to. So yeah, I would love to connect there.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, and review the podcast. It helps us reach more families who can benefit from this resource. For more resources, classes, and services, head to empoweredbeginningsatx.com or check out the Birth Baby Academy at birthbabyacademy.com. Until next time, wishing you confidence and calm on your journey through birth and beyond.